crack cocaine in the back alleys over there, buying dope over there. There's like little shacks behind all these stores that homeless people live behind. I was on Mill Avenue, and I went into the CVS on Mill, and I stole 2 bottles of Absolute vodka. And as I was walking out the store, I put the vodka in a sun bag, like a beach bag. And as I was walking out the store, me and the clerk caught eye, and he said, "Don't do it." And I said, "I have to do it." And I ran out the store with the vodka, and he chased me out, and I ran through the traffic, and he pushed me from the back, and I lost my shoe, and I fell on top of the vodka, and the vodka exploded all over me. The glass shattered all over me. It cut me up. I was bleeding everywhere. I had one shoe. I ran across the street onto the light rail, and I've had a lot of experiences like that.
Jesse Dallariva is leaving the baggage of his past behind.
From afar, Jesse Dallariva looks like your average 23-year-old.
His addiction at one point so bad he lived under a bridge in downtown Phoenix.
For years, he battled heroin addiction.
An addict, then a criminal. From heroin to meth, then jail to prison.
Jesse says he started using in high school, but his addiction got worse over the years.
The 23-year-old who was once hooked on drugs is now hooked on his education.
His struggle, success, and determination will inspire you.
Start with basics. Your name, age, and where you're from.
My name is Jesse Dallariva. I'm 23 years old. I was born in New Jersey. My parents moved to Florida when I was 5 years old. Then I moved to Phoenix, and I've been here for about 5 years.
So tell me about your childhood and how were you as a kid growing up?
My childhood I was well provided for in my childhood. I came from white suburban household, and my parents both worked hard. They weren't savagely addicted to drugs or living in a trailer park. They had a home that they bought together, but that doesn't solve all the problems of life.
You look very happy.
My parents divorced when I was about 8 years old, and it affected me in ways where because of the way they fought, I believe they were both horrible people. I believe they were both dishonorable people. The things that they would say to each other, the way that they'd speak to each other, the way they throw obscenities at each other, I started to believe they were horrible people. And then it made me mimic their behavior, and I became, an obscene person, and I became a bitter and resentful person because of what I believed about my parents.
So how old were you when you first tried drugs, and what was that experience like?
The first time I tried drugs, I think I was a sophomore in high school, 14 years old, 15 years old. The first time I tried it, I was walking in a Chevron gas station one day, and some guy came up to me and he asked me if I wanted to buy any pills. And at that point, I just said yes, and I bought some from him, and I tried them, and they were oxycodone 30 milligram tablets, and when I took it, I instantly fell in love with it. It gave me that sense of freedom and power in it, and from there, I started researching drugs on the internet. I wanted to experiment with all different kinds of drugs, any kind of drugs, anything that would change the way I viewed reality. I stopped that, and I started drinking from my parents' liquor cabinet, and then I just became a total pothead, total stoner. And from there, when the weed didn't satisfy me enough, I went back to the pain pills, and then my real problem started. My mother had grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and she had a friend that she lived with, that she was a roommate with in Brooklyn, that was on heroin. and she always suspected her roommate of being on heroin, but she never asked her. And then one day she did ask her, and she admitted to being on heroin when her stuff started going missing. And my mother looked at me one day and she said to me, "You look just like my friend who was on heroin back in Brooklyn, New York." And I of course denied it to the fullest. You know, I don't need my mother knowing I was experimenting with painkillers, because I was a manipulator and a liar. And it took her a couple months, I'd say, to give me an ultimatum of, you know, you can either go to treatment or you can leave my house. But she knew a place in Phoenix, a halfway house in Phoenix, that would take me for free, and she offered to buy me a plane ticket to go to Phoenix. So that family dropped me off at the airport, and they said, "This is it, don't come back to our house, you know, you're done." And I arrived in Phoenix January 1st of 2011. Definitely a culture shock for me. I never lived in the West Coast. I came from the suburban area. I never lived in the city. I was living in Central Phoenix. I was living at a halfway house called TLC, and there was a lot of people that had been to prison, that were convicted of violent felonies, that were on meth and heroin, something I hadn't experienced where I came from. It was all pain pills, and I met a lot of strange characters there. And I actually started using heroin there. I actually started shooting heroin there.
All narcotics and dangerous drugs have legitimate medical uses. Many are indispensable for pain-killing and sleep-producing properties. But in the hands of the addict, their use is perverted to secure an escape from reality.
How about this man? What narcotic is he addicted to?
All the people in this room are heroin users. Heroin is the strongest, most devastating opiate that exists.
When you shoot it, it's an instant rush. It's like doing a bunch of drugs all at once. It all hits you at one time, and you feel like you're floating almost. You feel like you don't have any worries in the world. Just all your pain, your worries, your fears, they all go away, and your whole body feels like it's tingling. It became a non-stop addiction and madness that I had to have. You know, I'd have track marks up and down my arm, abscesses up and down my arm. I'd walk around with a belt covered in blood from tying off on my arm, and I became a disaster. I became a walking nightmare.
So when did you start living on the streets, and what was that like at first?
I started living on the streets after I got kicked out of multiple halfway houses that only lasted for short periods of time. I just started living, you know, wherever, taking the buses, taking the light rail wherever, sleeping on mattresses, sleeping in different homeless camps throughout the city, in different spots, wherever I ended up. Basically, I had one main place behind the Ranch Market on 16th Street in Roosevelt, where on the side of the highway there was two walls that I think it was used as a wind tunnel or something, and we had mattresses back there, and like 10 of us people that were living on the streets would sleep back there, and we'd shower back there, and we'd do our drugs back there. Used to shoot a lot of dope back here. Used to be at this bus stop all the time. A lot of people did. Hopefully there's no one back here try to stab us. Yep, sure. See, we used to have mattresses lined up right here. Here's a meth pipe. That's still good meth pipe right there. Just Not anymore though. You take this, you look for these, you take this out of the cigarette butt. Cotton. Use that to put it in the spoon. And then you put the heroin on the spoon, you cook the heroin, and then you suck it out of the cigarette butt. I never thought I'd make it out of this spot right here. I never thought I'd make it out of it. I thought I was destined to do this forever. People just don't, people don't get what some people, the desperation some people get to, and live in a different world. It's like it's so surreal. Imagining myself living back here. That became my life. The transgenders, the prostitutes, the mentally unstable, the schizophrenics that all lived on the streets. That was now my family. The people that been on the streets for 10, 15, 20 years that were just living rough lives, just hopeless lives of desperation. And I became an example of that, even at 19 years old. And I was just filthy. I wouldn't shower. My mission was to steal so I could get drugs. Every day, that was my mission. I'd end up getting arrested again and again. And I think I got arrested maybe 10 times in 2011. After you catch 3 shoplifting charges in Arizona within 5 years, every one after that is a felony, an F4 felony called organized retail theft or felony shoplifting. And I get arrested, 3 weeks later for shoplifting. And this time I have 3 felony warrants, all the warrants hit. So this time, and another warrant now because I just got arrested. And this time I know I'm not getting out anytime soon. I know I'm going down this time. I went to prison in San Luis, in Yuma, and I spent 2 years on that yard, and I became even more corrupt in prison than I was living on the streets. I almost seen that as my way out, as my rehab. Go to prison, do another year, get clean again, come back out and start over. And I loved it almost. I felt like I had a family in there, and I was just alone for so many years, and I felt like I was loved by these people. And I felt like I was becoming a man in this prison system. I was selling drugs in prison. I was selling meth. It did its job of making me an even, worse individual. When I was released from prison, I was very happy. I had been living back on the streets again, addicted to methamphetamine this time, and I went to a detox center in downtown Phoenix. And I went to the detox center to kind of escape the potential consequences of my probation officer, kind of to appease her, to let her know where I was, and I was trying to get some help. So I went there. I was high out of my mind. I went there and I went into the back, the detox center, where you sleep and you detox. And a woman pulled me up, a peer support pulled me up, someone that worked there. And she just seen what a mess I was. And she started speaking her testimony of recovery to me.
I just felt compelled to tell him things that I usually don't take the time to share with other people. And I was hoping that he was listening, but you never know, it's hit or miss.
I remember getting out of that place and calling my mom up and telling her what happened and how this woman had spoke to me and really, convicted and cut into my heart. And I went to my probation officer the next day, and we looked up the info on the Phoenix Rescue Mission on the website, and we decided that I was going to come here and go into the recovery program. When I got clean, the main thing that I wanted to do was to give back to the populations that I was a part of. And I wanted to become a counselor. I wanted to be able to work with these people, use my testimony, use my experience, use my youth even, to minister to people that are suffering the same kind of trials that I went through. And I seen that getting an education in that would be the best possible route for me to go to accomplish my dream of doing that. The mission CEO brought up the fact that GCU, the president of GCU, Brian Mueller, had offered a scholarship to one of our transformation program graduates based upon an essay of their of why they think they deserve the scholarship, what they plan on doing with their education, how they plan on staying connected to recovery and the mission. And me being a graduate, said, oh, and that's awesome that I have first glance at this. I need to take advantage of this. So I started writing my essay right after that.
For the first time ever, GCU is giving one formerly homeless student a full ride scholarship, tuition, room and board.
He shared his story about drug addiction and his recovery, and that helped him land a full scholarship at Grand Canyon University.
Every month, the Phoenix Rescue Mission sends a newsletter out to people that are affiliated or have been previously affiliated with the Rescue Mission. And my story was featured in the newsletter that month. And it told my whole story, and that woman meeting me and speaking into my life and giving me her testimony, it's always been part of my testimony. In chapel services, when I get it, when I teach in class, when I give interviews, it's always been part of my testimony. And her mom was reading it at work, and she said, this sounds like my daughter. Because I had mentioned that I met someone at a detox center in downtown Phoenix that spoke into my life, that told me about the rescue mission, that had graduated from the Changing Lives Center. And she went home to her daughter, and she said, is this you? Do you know this guy? And the woman whose name Blake said, yes, yeah, I do know this guy. That's crazy. She came down here and she met me in the Vocational Development Center of the Phoenix Rescue Mission where I work. I started texting her, then I asked her out on a date, and ever since we went out on that date, we've been inseparable ever since. It was just unbelievable. It was unreal how these chain of events had happened in my life over the past, year and a half. It was amazing. It was crazy.